I was going to ignore this topic, and then Rich brought it up, and he made me mad, and so we're going to look at this. And this is Mark Halperin's new show, Not Two Way. And let's just sit back and watch, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 minutes. And as you're doing it, try to take stock of the logical coherency of what's being said.
Interested in trying to tell you what's really going on, as I said, through my reporting and my analysis and the folks we bring to you. So grateful to you for being a part of this first episode and hope you'll join us every Tuesday and Thursday right here. 100th day is, as people like to point out, an artificial construct. But there's lots going on in this administration. It has been historic. And of course, it started well before the president took office, from election day through the transition. And people generally see a tipping point
Hmm.
from a period where he was active and was
I didn't
dominating the
realize this was
conversation
his first
and
show.
getting a lot done. People now, I
Keep
think, are
watching.
seeing something different. And the tariffs are part of it. Signalgate's part of it. People I talk to every day can look at this administration, as has been true of almost anything connected to Donald Trump, in different ways. And I'm lucky, fortunate. I get to talk every day, literally every day, including on the weekends, with smart people who think the Trump administration, flaws and all, is off to a fast start and is
Yep,
revolutionizing America and the world in really important and positive ways.
I know.
And I talk to really smart people who think this is a disaster and that the first 100 days have illustrated not just the limits of Donald Trump and the MAGA movement, but their doom. And it's a disconcerting thing for me
Bold
because
statement.
my role is not to pick between those two sides, but to try to understand it
Yeah, this is Megyn
and
Kelly's
to
network.
explain it and hopefully to bridge between the two sides as best I can. And it's particularly confusing because, as I said, I'm talking about and two smart people, not dumb people, but smart people. And what I generally find is that we're having what the country western
If you
star
think
called
Donald Trump's
trouble with
doomed,
the
you're not
truth.
smart. Sorry.
That's, to me, a big part of the polarization, a big part of the failure to have any consensus. President's poll numbers are down, but they're not through the floor. And he continues to dominate not
That
just
is
the
true.
Republican Party, but Washington and the national and international conversation. Doesn't seem particularly hampered by his declined poll numbers, although Democrats say that foreshadows doom in the midterms next year.
It's also true.
When I talk about truth, a story
No,
that
Nancy, he is
continues
aware of
to be
us.
so
Just
emotional
wait for it.
for both sides is the question of this man who was deported, who here illegally, to El Salvador,
Oh,
Brago
brother.
Garcia. We still don't know if he's a gang member, right? Now, there are some MAGA people who say to me, of course he's a gang member, and evidence has been presented that case. But it's true, as people on the left will say, he's never been convicted. I don't quite understand the left's celebration of him. I don't quite understand the right's cavalier attitude towards the mistake that was made in sending him to El Salvador, where he was put in a prison. The one country, his home country, that the American system had said he shouldn't be sent to. But it's that not
Mm,
knowing the truth about whether he was a gang member. I've
that
not had
seems
time to do a lot of
selective.
original reporting on that, but from what's been reported, it's not clear. That's frustrating to me. And that's true about a lot of things having to do with the Trump agenda where there's spice.
Tell me what you think.
But
Do you
what
think he's
really
reading
bothers me more is both sides' denial of truth.
this
Both
teleprompter?
sides' denial of truth. Now, I'm going to talk
Oh, he's
about some
getting into it.
examples of
Denial of truth.
denial of obvious truth, some for the left, blue, some for the right, red. And ironically, that will inflame many of you. People on the red side will not like me calling them out. People on the blue side won't like me calling them out. But I firmly believe we need a fidelity
I let it go because he's about to call me out. But he framed it as denial of truth. Just keep saying that in your head.
to the truth. Now, one of the big stories about which there's dispute about the facts are it currently involves the Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth. Okay. And I'm going to talk a little bit about some news I have about Pete Hegseth and his status as Defense Secretary. But the question of the facts of Pete Hegseth, some of the things that he's done or been accused of doing that could lead to his being forced out of the Pentagon, is very frustrating to me because public debate should be about discussing the facts and what they mean and what to do about them
Facts.
rather
I
than
agree.
debating the
Discussing
facts.
facts.
So, first, let me talk about Team Red. Okay. This
Here we
morning
go.
on the two-way platform where I am editor in chief and host with my colleagues, Sean and Dan, the morning meeting. A guy called in, part of our community, Stephen Becker from Dallas, Texas. He said he was a Republican, and he described being frustrated by a lot of people in his life who are very MAGA, being unwilling to engage with the truth.
In the case of Trump, I'm in favor of, I would say, kind of the vast majority of the policies. I'm not happy necessarily with implementation, but I'm taken aback by an unwillingness to say, gee, I like most of the cabinet, but I don't like Hegseth, or anything along those lines. And I
Oh, you're
just
not
don't.
president, dude.
It's very hard for me to foot the same individual who's willing to. There's nothing else sacred necessarily in their life. They might even say, gee, I love my church, but I don't necessarily like this pastor, or I didn't like that sermon. And I have a hard time getting my arms around that.
What a great voice. Again, a member of the two-way community, Stephen Becker, coming in and saying something I experience all the time. MAGA people not willing to be the least bit critical. And we're not talking about people in public.
That's an interesting point. MAGA people aren't willing to be critical. After Kamala Harris's brat summer that when she was anointed without a democratic process, when nobody called her out on her horrible debate performance, pretty crazy. Anyway,
Where you
whatever.
do see sometimes Elon Musk is critical of the president, talking about private conversations at house of worship, at a baseball game, at a workplace. And it's disconcerting because there's some things that the president and his team haven't done well. And to not have truth on that, very troubling.
Nobody's
Here's another
perfect.
thing on the red side, okay? This is about polling. This is Benny
The red
Johnson
side.
hosting a program. And then he's talking to a Republican pollster, and they're basically saying all the
You called
polls
me
that
a
have come out in the
Republican
last
pollster.
few days that show President Trump's numbers declining, his favorability, his job performance, his favorable ratings on things like the economy going down. They posit that this is a conspiracy, that these polls are all wrong. Here's part of their conversation.
Is it just like going right back to 2024? Is it going right back to 2020? Is it just like you just gotta like start the machine all over again and produce fake polling results?
It feels like August and September. Like it feels exactly what happened. It's like, oh, we got a new entrant into the race, Kamala Harris. Let's see how the polling's going to do. And my numbers, it tightened a little bit, went from Trump +5 down to about Trump +2, and my numbers stopped there, and everybody else just kept going.
So here are these guys saying basically the polls are all wrong. They're in denial.
Guys.
Okay. Here's more denial. Okay. I read a tweet that
That made me so I'm in denial because I'm putting out data. I made a reasoned take and provided evidence and had a discussion about why I perceive these polls to be fake. And then he says these aren't fake polls. Well, does he keep saying it? What does he
this
say?
morning from a conservative who wrote this. The media hates Trump more than it values the truth. The media hates Trump more than it values.
Yeah, I'm sick of this. He goes on to say basically that these are not fake polls. No polls are fake. These are respected institutions, although they have a habitually liberal bias. Wait a minute. Fake news is news that has a habitually liberal bias. So then, by association, doesn't fake polling consist of polling that has an inherently liberal bias? So he called me a Republican pollster. False. Just as a reminder, this is our thumbnail today. The GOP blames you with Congress on fire and Trump making a face at Speaker Johnson. We're not a Republican pollster. We're pro-voter. And he says that I'm in denial without even understanding my argument, doesn't respond to the substance of my argument, dismisses me, one of the major names in the industry, in a very underhanded way. And so everybody says, well, oh, I like Mark Halperin. He tries to be even. What was that? That was pretty disingenuous. You should watch his Rich. I don't want to go into it too much. Rich railed on this guy for like 20 minutes and counted all the logical fallacies in his argument, but this is very deceptive. This is how it happens. So Mark Halperin, listen, everybody wants to be an independent journalist right now because they see what's happening on Twitter. But I can listen to Mark Halperin for 5 or 10 minutes and tell you that he is not a Glenn Greenwald. He is not a Matt Taibbi. These people are brutally anti-establishment because they're objectively looking at authority structures and saying they've run amok. And so if Mark Halperin wants to pretend to be a journalist, and I guess he's been part of NBC for 20 or 30 years, maybe that's part of the problem. Sort of hard to hate the establishment when you were a part of it, I guess, but I don't feel objectivity when I hear him talking. And I know his two-way shtick is a little different. It's a little bit more objective when you can sit back and listen to other people give two sides of an argument and play moderator. But then what happens is the big corporates say, hey, that's a great shtick. We're going to fund it without really understanding what it is, turn it into something that Megyn Kelly seems to have put money behind. But it's not going to work. I think they're going to lose objective thinking people, and it's just more leftist piffle. And good luck for them, like whatever. People have said, oh, you should go talk to him. I kind of don't want to. If it's on that show, he's going to be reading a teleprompter. He's going to be giving me disingenuous questions. I would go on two-way and discuss this, but let me first ask. And again, I have no problem debating people, but he didn't address the core of my argument, was I put out graphs that showed that these organizations all at once dumped particularly bad. And so, yes, it is correct that Donald Trump's approval has been dropping, but it dropped a whole hell of a lot in like 2 days. And then it went back up. Like, why? I'm in denial. I'm putting out data. I have data to back this up. I have more data put out there than the good and bad pollsters combined. Tell me I'm in denial. 49% right direction today. I'm in denial. And so what's appalling about Mark Halperin's attack on Rasmussen reports doesn't really have anything to do with bias. It has to do with the fact that it was a throwaway, offhand, pathetic, unresearched attempt to slander us without even understanding our argument. And that's just not the kind of thing objective people do. I wouldn't do that to somebody. I try and look at, give people a chance. It's like I wasn't railing on G. Elliott Morris until he kicked us out of the aggregate for political reasons. And so I call him an ideological retard. You know what I mean? Like, I don't attack Nate Silver unless he says something stupid and offensive to us. And again, I know a lot of people on the right like him. I'd advise you to stop. And maybe his show two-way is okay, but it's not going to end well. Like, Mark Halperin, address this. Address this image here from the fall. Was I in denial when I was the only person that said that Harris was going to lose and Trump was up 2 points? For any of you who need your reading glasses, every single one of those red circles is Rasmussen. The only red circles for like literally September 11th all the way to for an entire month. In the fall, in the election season, like the final 60 to 30 days, every single red circle was Rasmussen reports. Was I in denial or not? Was I MAGA or right leaning? No, I was like half a point off. So screw you. What about you're gonna call me a right leaning pollster when Ipsos had Harris +6, and then tell me that I'm not capable of being an arbiter on whether there are fake polls or not? Yeah. Hi, Mark Halperin. I believe, yeah, we said this. I'm kind of done. But let's also acknowledge that Halperin goes on in that show to talk about Joe Biden's mental acuity. And now all of a sudden it's a big story that it was covered up. I asked Grok, I said, hey, when is the earliest Mark Halperin reported about Joe Biden's mental decline? The earliest indication of Mark Halperin reporting on Joe Biden's mental decline appears to be from February of 2024. Joe Biden's presidency was over 3 years complete, less than a year ago, short timer, when he discussed a focus group of 8 voters who had voted for Biden in 2020. In this discussion on the Smirconish podcast, Halperin highlighted concerns among these voters about Biden's age and mental acuity, noting their hesitations despite their likelihood to vote for him again. So this was not even Halperin reporting. This is like he had a panel and his panelists are saying, why aren't you talking about this guy? He falls downstairs. Can't even complete a sentence and wanders off. While Halperin's more prominent and detailed claims about a media cover-up of Biden's cognitive decline gained traction later in 2024, notably in October. So Biden had already crapped himself in the debate and been thrown under a bus unceremoniously. And the system committed to Kamala Harris, and she was losing in October. And he went on Tucker Carlson and talked about Joe Biden's mental decline. What do you think, guys? Is that timely reporting? Does he have his finger on the pulse of politics to talk about in 2024, Joe Biden's mental decline? I want to hear comments. Like, what's your thoughts? Because I think it's embarrassing. Look at the date here, February 17th, 2022. And I can tell you, I asked to run this before this. 66% of voters believe Biden should take a mental test. So yeah, it's like good on us for polling this. But better on voters for saying 2 full years before Mark Halperin. How confident are you that Joe Biden is physically and mentally up to the job of being president of the United States? 56% not confident. A majority. 45% not at all confident. Only 52% of Democrats very confident. 80% of Republicans not confident. Like 62% of independents not confident. How did you think you were going to win those independent voters? 2022. We all know the problem was getting worse. And this obviously was not the only time we polled on it. We polled on it many times. This is the first one I can find. I think there's one from 21, to be honest with you, but do you agree or disagree with this statement? President Biden's mental decline and forgetfulness have become more apparent over the last 2 years. 63% agree, 47% strongly, 39% of Democrats. So the entire corporate media was covering up Joe Biden's mental decline. And 3+ years ago, 40% of Democrats agreed that he had an apparent decline. And so how can you be a Democrat and consume this news media when it obviously doesn't match your observed reality? That's the insidious part of this gaslighting operation, is because deep down in their hearts, I think a lot of these Democrats know it's a lie. Insidious. And it's not just the media, the establishment, the politics, the politicians, the corporations have all perpetrated this crime on the American people. Republican members of Congress have called on President Biden to take a test of his cognitive abilities and make the results public. Should Biden take a test similar to the one that former President Donald Trump took in 2018? 66% yes, 26% no. 43% of Democrats yes, 86% of Republicans, 70% of independents. How's that for two-way? Let's not talk about Republicans or Democrats, Mark Halperin. The independents, 70% to 21%, said, yes, we want Joe Biden to take a mental test. He's not all there. He's not all there. 67% of independents said he had apparent mental decline and forgetfulness. If you've learned something, please follow us at RasmussenReports.com, Rasmussen_poll at Twitter. Follow us on YouTube. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already. Mark_R_Mitchell at Twitter. And thanks for watching.